You are watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Your headlines this hour.
It was not our choice to come home, but we come home with no regrets.
Former South African ambassador to the United States, Ibrahim Rasool, touched down at the Cape Town International Airport to a rapturous welcome following his abrupt expulsion from Washington. Addressing the crowds, Rasool said he returns home without regret. In a developing story, 4 IFP supporters traveling in a bus have been injured following a crash on the R34 at Lakeside outside Vryheid in the northern KwaZulu-Natal. This comes as thousands of people are expected to gather in Ulundi for the party's 50th anniversary celebrations today at the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi Stadium. Ukrainian officials say a Russian drone attack on Kyiv killed at least 2 people and injured several others, sparking fires in high-rise apartment buildings and throughout the capital. A very warm welcome to the week ahead. We are live with you from our SABC News studios here in Johannesburg for the next 2 hours. Good afternoon. If you'd like to participate, please give us a call to share your thoughts or pose questions. The number is 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. As always, it's wonderful to have you with us. Well, it's a developing story that we start with this afternoon. Former South African ambassador to the United States, Ibrahim Rasool, touched down at the Cape Town International Airport to a rapturous welcome following his abrupt expulsion from Washington. Addressing the crowds earlier on, Rasool said he returns home without regret. Rasool returned to South Africa after he was declared persona non grata by the Trump administration for his remarks in a webinar that linked the U.S. president to white supremacy.
Rashida and I have just traveled about 32 hours from the United States via Doha to Cape Town. It was not our choice to come home, but we come home with no regrets. I want to say that we would have liked to come back with a welcome like this if we could report to you that we had turned away the lies of a white genocide in South Africa, but we did not succeed in America with that. We would have preferred to come here to say that we have won for you a goer, but we could not win it by withdrawing our case from the International Court of Justice against Israel, because as we stand here, bombing has continued and the shooting has continued, and if South Africa was not in the ICJ, Israel would not be exposed and the Palestinians would have no hope.
Yes.
We would have preferred to come here and say that we have won for you trade deals, and that we have been able to secure for us trade deals, but we could not do so by allowing the US to choose who must be our friends and who must be our enemies. So we don't come here to say that we are anti-American or that we have no need for America or that we don't have ties with America. We come here even after being declared persona non grata. We still come here and say we must rebuild and we must reset the relationship with America, because our relationship with America over 50 years has not always been with the White House. It has sometimes been with Congress, and it has always been with the people of the United States of America. When the White House and Congress declared us as terrorists, it was the dock workers in San Francisco that refused to touch South African goods. When Congress did not want to have sanctions, it was the American people who did not eat our fruit and did not touch our goods. And so we have this relationship that we must reset and we must rebuild. And we must hope that President Cyril Ramaphosa will be able to pick up where we left off. But we cannot have a simplistic idea that while we say there must be an ambassador, that you must put a white ambassador for a white president in the United States. And so, many people have said, what is diplomacy? We tried the conventional diplomacy and tried to avoid discussions about the genocide. We tried the conventional diplomacy and said that we must pretend that there is no merit in the idea, or that there's merit in the idea of land confiscations. We could not ignore that. And so we had to go to what is the diplomacy of Ubuntu, the diplomacy of mutual interdependence, that I am because you are. The diplomacy of Ubuntu is not the art of lying for your country.
That's true.
It is the art of speaking the truth, but gently. The diplomacy of Ubuntu is not flattering your host, and the diplomacy of Ubuntu is not denying what is wrong. The diplomacy of Ubuntu is intellectual engagement, and it is persuasion of your host about a better way. The diplomacy of Ubuntu is not sacrificing your values, but it is about universalizing your values. The diplomacy of Ubuntu is not about forfeiting your interests and not having interests with another country, but it is about pursuing your interest but keeping your dignity. That's what the diplomacy of Ubuntu is about, and that's what I thought was the way forward in this very difficult and challenging situation of our relationship with the United States. We have tried to engage. We have been met with executive orders that cut our aid, cut PEPFAR, and now we sit with the idea that millions could be reinfected HIV and AIDS. The research for the vaccine may not be one that could be completed. Those are the dangerous things, and why we must mend our relationship or sit out the next 4 years. This is what we have been trying to do, and we must wish that President Cyril Ramaphosa must be able to find someone who can mend that relationship out sacrificing our values.
Yeah, let's stay with that story. SABC News reporter Samkela Masego, right there at the Cape Town International Airport. Samkela, a very good afternoon to you. Talk to us. Rasool is back home. How did you read his body language?
Well, Rasool received a hero's welcome from those members of the Muslim Judicial Committee and also from members of the Tripartite Alliance, the ANC, the SACP and COSATU. They received him with a hero's welcome. There was that media scrum, around him where the security had to protect the former ambassador Ibrahim Rasool. He seemed very eager, very punchy. He was on that particular political mode to say that diplomacy is the one that has ultimately led to him being described and as a persona non grata in the United States of America. It is that Ubuntu diplomacy that does not sacrifice the humanity of the people of the world, the people of Palestine, in saying that he hopes that President Ramaphosa will find an ambassador that does not sacrifice South African values for expediency and puts the people of Palestine, and that they are never forgotten in the struggle of South Africa, and particularly saying that South Africa could not abandon its case in the International Criminal Court on the crimes against humanity that are being perpetuated by the Israeli government and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against the people of Palestine.
And Samkela, when do we expect him to meet the president? And I heard you posing a very important question there regarding the report that was requested by the president himself.
He has said that he has started that report. He did start that report whilst he was still in Washington, and that he will be traveling to Pretoria tomorrow, and that he will ultimately have that engagement with President Ramaphosa, with the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamula, in Pretoria, Advocate Ronald Lamula in Pretoria. On Tuesday, he will engage with the President, and ultimately, when he goes there, that report will be ready, and he will hand it over to President Ramaphosa.
And he certainly says that he doesn't have any regrets following that speech. Samkele, is that what you're reading from what you were listening to what he had to say following his arrival at the airport?
Interestingly, one of the startling comments that I got from him is that he wants to divorce his emotions from the true reality that is happening in the United States of America. He does not want his emotions to cloud his judgment, saying that he must create that distance between his feelings and the situation for about a week or two, and be able to engage with the situation calmly and have a true reflection of what is happening in the United States of America. But said that he is not particularly regretting the words he said at the Mr. Makumbube webinar, and that he stands by them, and that he was engaging with intelligentsia, with business, with labor, with politicians, to tell them that the situation in the United States of America has changed. They can no longer engage with the White House as business as usual. They've got to look back and analyze where the situation is currently, saying that the White House is very hostile to them. It is not like when Bill Clinton was still in office, when Barack Obama was still in office. Things have definitely changed in the United States of America, and the tact now needs to change. It's either you sit it out for 4 years, or you try and repair that relationship with America. You go and engage with Congress, you go and engage with the people of America, or the ordinary people of the states, and try and repair that particular relationship, saying that South Africa needs America, America needs South Africa, but South Africa can't engage with a government that has chosen a tiny fraction of society, the Afrikaner community in South Africa, saying that AfriForum could easily get an audience with the administration in Washington, but if they wanted an audience, it would be very difficult for them to get that audience as an African community.
And lastly, Samkele, what is his itinerary for the day? Are we expecting anything more today?
We're not expecting anything more. He is now effectively going home. He is going to relax. He is going to finalize that report to President Ramaphosa. He has requested about a week or two to come down, to distance himself from the situation, and ultimately then he will be able to engage. I do anticipate that in a week or two from now, he will have a heavy political engagement as an ordinary citizen of the country, to freely engage in domestic and international politics.
Samkele, thanks so much indeed, my colleague Samkele Maseko at the Cape Town International Airport. Now, the IFP's celebratory rally is continuing at the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi Stadium in Ulundi in northern KwaZulu-Natal. This as the party observes its 50th anniversary. SABC News reporter Simpiwe Makanya tells us more. All right, Simpiwe is actually live with us. Simpiwe, just talk to us. What are you seeing? What is the latest where you are?
Well, Makeketa, it's good afternoon to you and good afternoon to the viewers at home. A short while ago, the president of the IFP, Mr. Velunkosini Hlabisa, made a grand entrance here at the Prince Mangosuthu Regional Stadium in Ulundi, where he's being welcomed by thousands of party supporters who are obviously anticipating to hear that keynote address from him as the party celebrates 50 years of existence. Of course, it's been a long journey for the IFP. A lot of achievements have been scored by this political party, but also there are challenges within the party that the party seeks to address as it reflects on the journey of 50 years of its existence. I'm going to step out of the shot, Makeketa, and allow my colleague to show you just the amount of people who are here, who are excited, of course, to take part in today's main rally that is being held by the Inkatha Freedom Party as it celebrates 50 years of existence. I'm going to see if we can be able to speak to at least two of the supporters who have come out here to support the event. Sikubingelele sikwamukele indabeni sisi uqhamukaphi owakwabani nokuthi kungani ulana namhlanje.
Igama lami nguSamukelo Ngamazibuko from Ceza ukuthanda inkasi ngaqala nje ngimncane Nkosi yami ngimncane ushenge hawu
Siyabonga.
Ngibingelele msakazi SABC igama lami nguMbali Ngwantombela ngisokwa 23 kusekhansela kwaBudlamini size lapha sobungaza inyaka o50 ushenge alola inkululeko yethu kuningi akwenzayo so celebrate namhlanje siyabonga
uMakhonkolo ona join iqembu leKatha ngo94 iqala ngithi manje ngizobungaza iminyaka ewu50 ngiphuma ngaphansi kom40.
Thank you so much. Well, that's the excitement that is happening here, Makeketla, of party supporters who have gathered to reflect really on the journey of the Inkatha Freedom Party. The official program, Makeketla, is just about to commence following the arrival of the leadership of the IFP. Perhaps it's important to just highlight that the provincial leadership of the DA is also represented at this particular rally here to offer their words of support. I presume the leader that I've spotted is Mr. Dean McPherson as well as Mr. Francois Rogers, who have been also allocated seats there at the main stage. Of course, you'd recall that the IFP is leading the government of provincial unity in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and it's working closely with the parties such as the Democratic Alliance as well as the African National Congress and also the National Freedom Party. So I think the presence of the DA here speaks to really the relationship that exists between the parties, which is the IFP as well as the Democratic Alliance. It's over to you, Makeketla, but I can tell you now that the official program is just about to commence, and we'll be giving our viewers rolling coverage as it obviously commences. Makeketla.
Indeed, we will be watching that story closely. Thanks so much, Simpio Makanya, there in Ulundi. Now, as the Inkatha Freedom Party celebrates its 50th anniversary, we are reminded of the complex and often tumultuous journey that has defined South Africa's transition to democracy. Founded in 1975 by Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the IFP has been a pivotal player in the country's political history, often finding itself at the center of controversy, from its role as a homeland in the apartheid era to the violent clashes with the African National Congress during the transition period. The IFP has faced numerous challenges that have tested its resolve. The party's late leaders have also been embroiled in controversy, with some critics accusing them of being too cozy with the apartheid regime. Yet, despite these storms, the IFP has endured adapting to the changing landscape of South African politics. Today, as the party marks a half-century of existence, we are forced to confront the complexities of its legacy and the implications of its continued presence in South African politics. To help us navigate these questions, we are joined by Prof. Musa Xulu, a renowned political analyst via Teams meeting. Prof. Xulu has provided insightful commentary on KZN political tensions and has commended the government of provincial unity in KwaZulu-Natal for their efforts in rebuilding the province. Prof. Xulu, thanks so much for your time and for your patience. Perhaps before we deep into this analysis, you've seen former ambassador of South Africa to the United States, Ibrahim Rasool, being welcomed at the Cape Town International Airport. I just want to hear your views regarding the reception there. What do you make of that?
Well, thank you, my brother, and thank you to your viewers. Look, it was expected that there would be some audience coming there to welcome him, although the president and the presidency had said that maybe we should have lesser of those welcoming events. But of course, it was clearly, because when you look at it, Abraham Rasool has had a long history of liberation struggle, especially in the Western Cape at a ground level. And it was expected that those who have known him for a long time would be available to welcome him. However, it's a complex matter because in reality, people in South Africa can say many other things about our relationship with the USA currently. There is only one problem that has caused that whole thing. We can look at it from various angles, but it's all about the ICJ case against Israel. And I think President Donald Trump is acting at revenge level for Israel to ensure that South Africa gets intimidated and that they do not continue with this case.
Yeah.
And of course, the other problem is that some of these international bodies are highly funded by the United States of America. So it's a very complex situation. Yeah. I know our president would like the relationship with the United States of America to be restored to what it was in the past. Maybe it is time to move in that direction rather than to think that you can maybe survive without the United States. I don't think so. I think it needs correction, but it needs admission and publicly stating that the cause of the problem was that we are a human rights country and we couldn't fold our hands when something so terrible was happening in Israel. However, we don't want to lose any of our trading and diplomatic partners around the globe as a result of this action and activity.
Yeah, and just briefly, Prof, before we delve into the IFP story, and you might have heard him there, Rasool, saying that he doesn't have any regrets. Just the question of what do you think his future prospects are? Prof, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Prof? All right, it seems like Prof. Xulu, we might have lost his audio there, but we'll try to reconnect him. Okay, we understand that Prof. Xulu, you are back. I was just asking, following what you've just said, in terms of what do you think Rasool's future prospects are?
Well, I think the president will look for something for him because it was not 100% his fault. Yes, the utterances may have not been in diplomatic spirit, but he was merely uttering what many South Africans are saying. I think the president will look for something for him, possibly in the Department of DERCO, so that he can continue with his diplomatic work, maybe elsewhere or within the country.
Thanks so much indeed for your insights there. Now let's go back to our main story. I mean, can you just start by sharing your thoughts on the significance of the IFP's 50th anniversary?
Well, 50 years as a political party is a big milestone, and it should be celebrated by the IFP and its friends. Even its foes will also acknowledge that that has been a long time. But as you rightly pointed out in the beginning, the history of the IFP has been not very flat and strong. It has been a very windy kind of road that they've had to walk since 1975. They were formed in the Anglican Church at Melmoth. And so there have been a kind of association in the minds of people that they're an extension of the church. But also there was a thinking that was circulated that it was on the instruction of Oliver Tambo that the IFP was formed to be an internal kind of wing of the ANC. But that went only as far as 1979 when there was a big quarrel between the ANC and the IFP in London. And that was followed by a new era altogether in the beginning of the 1980s and until well after 1994, where the IFP and the UTF-ANC were at war completely here in KZN, basically, primarily, but also in Gauteng. And that was a very dark period. Some 20,000 people are reputed to have died as a result of that violence. And in my other life as a pastor, I think the ANC and the IFP do need to conduct some kind of peace and reconciliation ceremony in which they show that what happened during that time will never happen again. And then, of course,
Yeah, go ahead. In fact, I wanted to ask about that, Prof. I mean, the IFP has been criticized for its role in the violent clashes in the 1980s and 1990s. How do you respond to those criticisms?
Well, they were, it looks like at some stage, some of their people would go to a community and initiate violence, especially the hostel dwellers around Durban, and even in some of the townships like Eskawini here. There were instances where, for example, in 1983, out of the blue, they attacked students at the University of Zululand, and 5 students were killed. So they have been seen as having initiated the violence, but maybe that's not completely true, although at the moment you don't have evidence to the contrary. And then, of course, communities in many townships started forming self-defense units. And the self-defense units mainly aligned to the ANC and UDF, they started fighting back, pushing back in many townships around Durban, Pietermaritzburg, etc. And it became very intense. And they were born a class of people which were known as warlords, whose specialty was just to attack and kill and ensure that the IFP makes inroads. But inroads were not so successful. As a result, the IFP eventually became more of a political party of the north of the Tukwela River here in KZN. That is how it all ended in that era. But in 1994, they did win KZN by 50% plus 1. And that was their highest point that they've reached in political fortunes. And then, of course, they began to decline. Now they stand at 18%. I can't see them growing much, much bigger than that or going lower than that. The problem with KZN is the coming in of the MK party. In the past, it was always IFP versus the ANC. But then the ANC is a 17% political party now. So their biggest problem in KZN is going to be MK party, as has been shown that MK is now the biggest political party here by far.
Yeah, and some have argued that the IFP's opposition to the ANC during the transition to democracy was a major obstacle to progress, Prof. What's your perspective on this issue?
Well, that was a general perception that you can have A, and the A side was that the IFP underwent a lot of onslaught in terms of brand marketing and so on in the 80s and early 1990s. And they couldn't formulate a communication machinery about what they were up to. And maybe when you look at it closely, the issue of then resorting to violence was born out of not knowing what to do in terms of political communication in the transition stage. And yes, they moved out of CODESA. They moved out of the process of the drawing of this constitution. They created something which was called the demands of the Zulu King. And the Zulu King, of course, later said he had never had any demands. And all of those in the early 1990s were seen as strategies maybe to delay the transition. Fortunately, after the elections in 1994, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi understood that the game had changed, and he was very, very instrumental in working with President Nelson Mandela and President Mbeki to form a government of national unity and provincial unity here in KZN.
Yeah, and how do you think the IFP's legacy has been impacted by the controversy surrounding its former leader? You've just mentioned him there, Mangosuthu Buthelezi.
Well, it's difficult. They have to work on their political communication machinery. At the moment, the general perceptions of people, especially in KZN townships, and possibly also in Gauteng, because they were big there with violence, is that they are a violent political party. And I don't think that they are not aware of that. They just don't know how to get out of it. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was able to turn his fortunes around through all sorts of maneuvering. including the fact that he was a traditional prime minister to the Zulu king. So on another day, in the morning, he would be an IFP leader, and in the afternoon, he would be traditional prime minister to the Zulu king and the Zulu nation, and he would exploit that politically to maximize his political fortunes. Unfortunately, and in 2004, they couldn't sustain it. The ANC won the province. And then in 2009, it became worse when President Jacob Zuma became president of the ANC and had a Zulu appeal immediately here in KZ and pushing the ANC to above 65%. And then, of course, in 2011, Zanele Magwaza Msibi left them and started the NFP. And they've only started recovering from that, but they have been now a political party in the teens in terms of KZN and of less than 5% nationally.
Yeah.
And not point something in Gauteng and in other provinces completely not available. So they have been limited by the Zulu brand. Maybe they are associated too much with Zuluness and the hostels and all that culture. And they've not been able to live out of that. Look, President Jacob Zuma started MK Party as a Zulu kind of, and won some elections there very well. But then you can see they're beginning to win by elections in the Western Cape and other provinces. I can't see the IFP being able to do that.
Yeah. Prof, thanks so much for your insights. A story that we'll keep watching closely here on the SABC News channel. We appreciate your insights as always. That's Prof. Musa Xulu, political analyst. Now to this. Gauteng Premier Banyazale Sufi is today visiting the families of 4 community patrollers who were shot and killed at the Merimi informal settlement in Soshanguve in the early hours of yesterday morning. According to initial accounts, 4 community-based patrol members were shot and killed and 8 others were injured in a confrontation between the patrollers and 5 individuals. Mbalenhle Mtetwa joins us live from Soshanguve. Very good afternoon to you, Mbalenhle. Just what's the latest at this stage?
Well, we understand that the Premier will be visiting the families of the 4 who were fatally shot and allegedly stoned by people in the middle of the night or in the early hours of Saturday morning while they were patrolling the informal settlement that they were tasked with protecting from criminal elements. And we are hoping to also get an opportunity to speak to the Premier. He has arrived and he is meeting with police officers inside, where we believe he is being briefed as to how far the investigations and what preliminary investigations reveal into what transpired in that very unfortunate incident that took place in the early hours of Saturday morning. We understand that there are those who were injured and who were rushed to hospital and are receiving medical attention right now. But we are hoping to get an update as to what is happening and what is the status and the condition of those who are there, who are in hospital at the present time. So at the moment, we are seeing police officers and what seems to be going to be a police contingent that will be accompanying the Premier as he crisscrosses the streets of Soshanguve in an effort to comfort the family members of those who lost their loved ones, and just to speak to them and possibly give them words of encouragement and hope that justice will indeed be served, and also that those who are responsible for this cruel crime will be brought to book. I'm just going to step out of the shot just to show you where we are. It might look like nothing much is happening right now, but there are police officers coming in and out. There are Gauteng traffic officers as well as traffic wardens, as well as South African police officers that are here ensuring that they are able to protect and ascertain the protection of the journalists who will be accompanying the Premier to the scene of the crime as well as to where the incident, to the different family households and the households that we're going to be visiting with the Premier. We have seen a statement coming out of the office of the Premier, and we are certainly expecting the Premier to condemn such an act. But we are also hoping to speak to the Premier about, community safety, given the fact that community safety is a portfolio that falls right under his list of responsibilities. You will remember that when this new government was formed, the Premier took the portfolio of community safety and brought it under the umbrella of the office of the Premier. We will be also asking questions as to ascertain and find out what exactly the Premier will be doing in order to augment safety measures in these communities and in such communities, and if we will see crime prevention, Gauteng traffic wardens being deployed there to assist in what seems to be a dire need for of the fight against crime in that particular community. And will we be seeing more police visibility and law enforcement, and more boots on the ground really following the incident that has taken place?
Yeah, what a devastating story there in Soshanguve. Mbalenhle Mthethwa, SABC News reporter. Thanks so much indeed. Now, let's have a look at stories that made headlines in the Sunday newspapers. And as always, we start with Sunday Times. It's a story by Leonie Wagner. Headline: Despairs child abuse cases stall in court. New data from Teddy Bear Foundation reveals shockingly low conviction rate for crimes against children. And Sunday Times reporting there that of the more than 5,000 cases of child abuse reported to the Teddy Bear Foundation in the past 5 years, just 4%, about 1 in 25, have resulted in a conviction. The grim statistic underscores a growing concern over the way South Africa's strained justice system is failing the most vulnerable members of society. Delays and frequent postponements, many of them linked to staff shortages, load shedding, and other technical issues plague the court. That's the leading story in the Sunday Times. Now, the next headline is found in the Sunday Tribune. Here's a story by Loyiso Sidimba, headlined SSCP Cosatu defy president. You've seen that story playing out at the Cape Town International Airport when Ambassador Rasool returned. USSA tensions rise over former Ambassador Rasool's expulsion. Trade Union Federation COSATU and the SA Communist Party SSCP are not backing down from a rally today to welcome home now former South African ambassador to the US, Ibrahim Rasool, after his expulsion. This is despite President Cyril Ramaphosa urging people to refrain from partaking or engaging in action that may seem inflammatory and worsen the already volatile diplomatic relationship with the US. The ANC in the Western Cape has bowed to pressure and indicated that it will adhere to Ramaphosa's call, according to the party's Khaled Said. However, Said said it was incorrect to say the ANC had bowed to pressure. You saw them in those colors there at the airport welcoming Ibrahim Rasool. But you'll find full details of that story in the Sunday Tribune. Now we move on to the Sunday World. This is a story written by Mzilikazi wa Afrika and Situma Stone, headlined Knives Out for Nchabeni. An intelligence report produced recently claims that Nchabeni is using state resources to target opponents. Knives are out for Minister in the Presidency, Kumbunzo Nchabeni, after an intelligence report accused her of abusing state resources to quote-unquote further political and personal ambitions. The report, seen by Sunday World, claims Nchabeni initiated a covert operation called Sibonkolo to monitor and smear the current Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, but its framework has since been expanded to target 9 other senior ANC politicians as, quote unquote, she has ambitions to become one of the ANC top 6. But the report doesn't state what position she has her eyes on. Nchabene's confidantes and sympathizers yesterday dismissing the report as hogwash and information peddling by rogue elements within the State Security Agency, which falls under her purview. That story found in the Sunday World, and those are the stories making headlines in the Sunday newspapers. Now, the week ahead continues after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back and thanks for staying with the week ahead. Now, Transport Minister Barbara Creecy earlier briefed the media about the request for information on interested and affected parties on the potential private sector partnership in the rail and port freight, logistics and passenger rail. The RFIs aim to develop commonly agreed upon framing problem statements for PSP projects. Specific RFIs will be developed for freight and passenger rail PSP projects.
Today, I am launching an online request for information to develop an enabling environment for private sector participation and enhanced investment in rail and port infrastructure and operations. As you are all aware, South Africa's rail and port infrastructure faces substantial challenges, including declining performance, vandalism and theft, underinvestment and operational inefficiencies. All of these currently hinder trade and economic growth. The limited availability of state resources to fund infrastructure development and address backlogs has intensified these challenges, severely restricting the ability of state-owned enterprises to fulfill their mandate. Together with Transnet, government has received numerous unsolicited proposals from the private sector, offering investment, skills, and expertise to support the rehabilitation and reform of our struggling rail and port systems. This overwhelming interest has made it clear to the Department and Transnet that we must engage in broad and inclusive market research before issuing requests for proposals in August this year. These are not formal procurement processes in themselves, but a mechanism to understand and source information from the market. To ensure that future requests for proposals are well responded to, government recognizes the importance of understanding the freight logistics landscape through the perspective of interested and affected parties, so that our solutions are both effective and sustainable. In this initial phase of private sector participation, the request for information will focus on the following corridors: Northern Cape to Saldanha bulk mineral corridor, primarily for iron ore and manganese exports, and the Northern Cape to Nelson Mandela corridor, primarily for manganese exports. This includes the complete pit to port rail, port terminal infrastructure and equipment supporting the transport of iron ore from mines in the Greater Soshanguve region to the port of Saldanha, as well as the movement of manganese from mines located between Hottesville and Postmasburg to the port of Saldanha and to the ports of Port Elizabeth and Ngqocha in Nelson Mandela Bay, and the back of port arrangements. Secondly, Limpopo and Mpumalanga to Richards Bay Bulk Minerals Corridor PSP project for coal and chrome exports, including provision for magnetite exports at the port. This includes the full pit-to-port, rail, port and terminal infrastructure and equipment supporting coal exports from the mines in Lepelale, Limpopo, chrome exports from the Western Limb mines in the Rustenburg Brits region in Northwest, and coal exports from various mines across Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal to the port of Richards Bay. Particular attention is given to the Bayview precinct, where non-Richards Bay coal terminal coal, chrome and magnetite are handled through the dry bulk and multi-purpose terminals and the back of port arrangements.
To this story now, South Africa will host the second G20 Health Working Group meeting in Durban in KwaZulu-Natal from Tuesday to Friday this coming week. The meeting, under the theme Accelerate Health Equity, Solidarity and Universal Coverage, will include side events for bilateral and multilateral engagements. The Global Leaders Network will be part of the talks and will hold senior technical level discussions on women's, children's and adolescents' health tomorrow. Joining us now is Sibusiso Tajwako, Director of External Affairs at Africa Region. Sibusiso, thanks so much for joining us. Good afternoon to you. Firstly, who or what is the Global Leaders Network and what is the importance of their participation in these talks at the G20?
Thank you so much for having me. The Global Leaders Network is a high-level political advocacy initiative that brings together heads of states and governments to champion health and well-being of women, children, and adolescents. It is chaired by our President Cyril Ramaphosa, and it's supported by what's called the Partnership for Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health, PNMCH in short. It is the first ever Southern-led global health diplomacy effort that ensures that maternal, newborn, and child health remains at the forefront of international political discussions. And its participation in the G20, as you've asked, it is crucial. It's crucial because it elevates issues of maternal, neonatal, and child health to the highest level in terms of political policy decision-making. And it also ensures that leaders globally prioritize these issues. It also helps to mobilize financial commitments under these underfunded health systems, particularly for low and middle-income countries. It influences policies and frameworks that shapes access to healthcare, vaccines, and essential medicines. And lastly, the G20 under South Africa's leadership provides a unique opportunity to push for stronger health financing mechanisms for primary healthcare investments and equity-driven policies that can save millions of lives. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting points you're mentioning there, but the figures are quite shocking. So one pregnant woman or newborn dies every 7 seconds. Just how far are countries on meeting the SDG goals on women, children, and adolescents' health?
Yeah, and again, you are very correct to these shocking statistics that the world doesn't need. But some progress has been made. Many countries are still far from achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We have got 5 years to 2030. Maternal mortality, though, has declined from 34% globally, and that is from 2000 to 2020. But progress has stagnated in many countries, particularly in Africa. Under 5 mortality rates have decreased from 4.9 million children under 5 still died in 2022 from preventable causes. So these are concerning statistics. And we still have got adolescent birth rates that have declined. We've seen progress, but there's still more to be done. Adolescent birth rates declined from 47.2 per 1,000 in 2014 to 40.7 per 1,000 in 2024. But gaps still remain in access to contraception and also to education. Also, COVID did not help because then we had the pandemic, and then we had also economic crisis, political instability, and also there's been further disruptions in terms of funding as well. And if the current trends continue, many countries will fail to meet the SDGs by 2030. And then this highlights an urgent need for accelerated investments into maternal, neonatal, and child health programs.
Yeah, and nearly 7 out of 10 maternal deaths occur in Africa, and sub-Saharan Africa accounts for 46% of neonatal deaths globally. These figures, how do they translate into the funds available to tackle these challenges?
I'll highlight again what you've said when you say 7 out of 10 maternal deaths occur in Africa. These statistics highlight the deep inequality in global health financing. Sub-Saharan Africa bears the highest burden of maternal, newborn, and child health, and yet funding remains insufficient. Many African countries allocate less than 10% of their national budgets to health, falling short of the international commitments. And then donor aid for maternal, neonatal, and child health is declining, and domestic budgets are stretched due to economic downturns and debt burdens. And then African healthcare systems remain underfunded, leading to critical shortages of doctors, nurses, essential medicines. We also see quite a number of our healthcare workers migrating as well to other continents due to many reasons. And then the Global Leaders Network and partners are calling for several things in order to bridge this gap. So one of them is increased G20 financial commitments, and that's what we're hoping to see next week as we begin not from tomorrow, as we begin these discussions. They're also calling for public-private partnerships to expand funding, and also debt relief measures that can free up resources for health investments. Without substantial new investments, these devastating statistics will only worsen in the coming years.
And then here is another thing. Domestic public spending on health per capita declined in all country income groups in 2022. What is the situation now, and what will GLN call for to remedy the circumstances?
Yeah, so the global economic downturn has severely impacted health budgets, particularly in low and middle income countries. In 2022, health spending per capita declined across all countries and income groups, leading to weakened healthcare systems. And then many governments have redirected funds to crisis response efforts, leaving maternal, child health, and neonatal health underfunded, and health workforce shortages continue to rise in the African region. So what is the GLN calling for? What is the Global Leaders Network calling for? The GLN is calling for replenishing of health budgets and prioritization of maternal, neonatal, and child care in domestic spending. Also calling for innovative financing mechanism, including taxes on harmful products like tobacco and alcohol, and also a call for stronger G20 commitments to fund universal health coverage and strengthen primary healthcare systems. This is a critical moment for global leaders to reverse the decline and reinvest in health of the most vulnerable population.
Yeah, and SABC, we will keep highlighting these stats because they sort of paint a grim picture in terms of commitment, in terms of trying to resolve all these issues that we have mentioned. In Africa, only 2 out of 55 African Union countries in 2021 met the Abuja Declaration target to allocate 15% of GDP towards the health sector. What funding models should countries consider?
Yeah, and this is a very pertinent question, especially at this time where we are in terms of global health financing. So African countries need to face this significant budgetary constraint by coming up with alternative funding models that can help close the gap. Amongst things that can be done is innovative taxation. Countries can introduce health-focused taxes on sugar drinks, alcohol, tobacco to generate revenue that can help in terms of health programs. They also need to do more in terms of public-private partnerships, PPPs, that is engaging private sector across infrastructure, supply chain management, telemedicine. How do you leverage issues like digital public infrastructure to expand access to healthcare? We also need to consider African countries are swamped with debt, so we need to consider debt swaps for health, and that is negotiating debt reliefs in exchange for increased health investments that can free up resources, which can then be brought back to the budget to support healthcare systems. And then we need blended finance models, combining public, private, and donor funding and scaling up investments. If we can do these things, and then we'll need to see G20 supporting these models by providing technical and financial assistance to African governments in particular.
Yeah, interesting take. And given the cuts in official development aid, what should countries be doing to increase investment in women, children, and adolescent health?
The first thing is strengthening self-reliance. And then how do you do this? I mean, you need to have domestic resource mobilization, that is increasing national budgets and making spending more efficient. And I'll emphasize making spending more efficient, because if we can tie up our budgets and spend more efficiently, then we'll be able to achieve more for each rand that is invested into health. We also need social health insurance schemes, like what South Africa is working on the NHI, expanding coverage through mandatory health insurance to reduce out-of-pocket expenses. Also need regional cooperation. African nations must work together to negotiate bulk purchasing agreements for medicines and vaccines to lower costs. That is pool procurement, an initiative that is also being driven by the African Union through Africa CDC and out and apart. So the Global Leaders Network is calling on the G20 multilateral institutions to support countries in mobilizing domestic funding for health.
Yeah, and failure to protect sexual and reproductive health results in 164 million women still having an unmet need for family planning, leading to unsafe abortions, causing 13% of all maternal deaths. What political will and intervention do you think is needed here?
There's a lot of political will that's needed, and it is our hope, and it is what the GLN is driving. It is our hope that G20 will also take this up. But we need access to contraception and safe abortion services, which is a human right. And also we need economic, it's a human right and economic necessity. We need to reduce maternal deaths, and governments need to, first of all, remove legal and policy barriers that prevent access to contraception. And also we need to expand comprehensive sexual education to empower women and girls in particular. Also need to increase domestic financing for family planning programs to reduce dependency, particularly on donors. So governments need to take that responsibility, and political leaders must champion these issues boldly and ensure that SRH, sexual reproductive health, remains a global health priority despite the many challenges.
Sibusiso, thanks so much for your insights. We appreciate it. That was Sibusiso Kajwako, who is the Director of External Affairs at Africa Region. Now, this is the week ahead here on the SABC News Channel. Thank you for being with us. We will continue at the top of the hour. You are watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Your headlines this hour.
It was not our choice to come home, but we come home with no regrets.
Expelled Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool says conventional diplomacy was not effective in relations with the US government, and therefore he embarked on what he calls Ubuntu diplomacy.
We are now at a situation where government cannot afford to have analog switch on in operation, because simply the cost of keeping digital and analog signals has become very expensive.
Communications and Digital Technologies Minister says delays in switching to digital broadcasting has cost the government over R1 billion. Welcome to the second hour of the week ahead here on the SABC News Channel. We are live with you from our SABC News studios here in Johannesburg. I'm Mark Keita. You are still welcome to participate in our conversations. Give us a call on our studio number at 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. It's an honor to have you with us at this hour. Now, the IFP celebratory rally is continuing at the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi Stadium in Ulundi. This, as the party observes its 50th anniversary, party leader Velenkosini Tlhabisa will be taken to the podium, but we'll be watching those developments in a moment. And once he goes to the podium, we will take you there. Now to this, Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Solly Malatsi has revealed that the delays in switching from analog to digital broadcasting has cost the government 1.2 billion rand over the past decade. He emphasized that further delays would add to the financial burden as the maintenance costs of both analog and digital towers continue to rise. Malazi was speaking during the handover of digital gadgets to last year's matric top achievers and digital SMMEs in Polokwane, Limpopo.
Malazi says they are awaiting a decision by the High Court in Pretoria before taking action on digital migration and the analog switch off. This as some broadcasters have taken the matter to court, seeking a further extension of the deadline that has been set for the 31st of this month. Interested parties have also made their submission in the High Court.
We are now at a situation where government cannot afford to have analog switch on in operation because simply the cost of keeping digital and analog signals has become very expensive, right, for government. In fact, since 2014, it has cost government over 1.2 billion. But also it's because that the nature of broadcasting, the evolution of broadcasting means that analog is becoming inefficient. And this matter is now also before the court. You would know that there is a media house which has taken the matter to the court. The court ventilated this on the 18th and the 19th, and the matter was postponed to next week, Thursday. As a government, we are law-abiding and we respect the courts, and we'll see what the courts say on Thursday. But from government's position, the position is that analog switch off will proceed at the end of this month.
Digital migration aims to provide high-quality television access to residents, including in remote areas. Malachi also handed over brand-new gadgets to last year's matriculants. The aim is to bridge the digital divide. Beneficiaries were excited.
I will use the tablet to do all the assignments, to research, and even receive the emails.
It will assist us in applying and checking the emails, and also to get exposed to more technological world.
Malazi also spoke about the upgrading of the old SASA gold cards to the new Post Bank black cards. He said current beneficiaries who haven't changed their cards should use the Post Bank to withdraw their grants.
The changing of the gold cards is still continuing. What stopped on the 20th is that those gold cards are no longer working to withdraw money other than at the post offices. So if you want to withdraw money as a SASA beneficiary using a gold card, you'll have to go to a post office branch and you will be able to be helped there.
He also defended his decision to withdraw the SABC bill. He cited concern that the current bill does not address the financial stability of the broadcaster. Mahlazi Paradim, SABC News, Polokwane.
Now in news further afield, Pope Francis will be discharged from Rome's Gemelli Hospital today. The Vatican says he will need at least 2 months of rest. The 88-year-old was admitted to the hospital on the 14th of February with a severe respiratory infection that resulted in double pneumonia. Now, during the past 5 weeks, he presented 2 very critical episodes where his life was in danger. Doctors say Pope Francis was never intubated and alert and oriented. They say the Pope is not completely healed, but no longer has pneumonia and is now in a stable condition. He will offer a blessing from his window at the Gemelli Hospital today. It will be the first time he appears in public since he was admitted to hospital before returning to his residence at the Vatican. Now, as the Muslim holy month of Ramadan draws to a close, the South African National Zakah Fund is working to ensure that thousands of families in need have a meal to celebrate Eid al-Fitr. In Athlone in Cape Town, and volunteers are packing thousands of food hampers for distribution to mosques around the Western Cape.
Ramadan is a month in which Muslims refrain from eating and drinking during daylight hours, but it's also much more than that. A spiritual time of prayer and reflection. It serves as a reminder of the realities facing the less fortunate.
What happens is significant with regards to Ramadan is that we got the opportunity not to spiritually enlighten ourselves, empower ourselves. We also got the opportunity to feel what the poor and needy go through on a daily basis.
Here at the Bridgetown Mosque, volunteers are doing their bit to ensure that come Eid, Those who fasted during the month will be able to have a meal. Through charitable mandatory donations given during Ramadan, known as Zakah al-Fitra, Zanzab hopes to provide 50,000 food hampers to families in need across the Western Cape.
We, alhamdulillah, we buy groceries, we put it into parcels to make sure that the dignity of that mother, we give that dignity back to the mother and the father, where they can cook something for their family. And that is something that's been divinely systematically put together with regards to fitra. So fitra is paid to cleanse your fasting, so you can present your fasting to your God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the best manner possible.
Volunteer packers include young and old.
We get involved in packing because it's part of our community service. We have to do, as a patrol, we have to do 25 hours for the year. So we get involved with as many organizations as we can during Ramadan because that's the most time we get.
I actually started volunteering. So when volunteering, you're more on the ground, right? So you go out into the communities and you see the circumstances and the situations that they're currently in. And I mean, if it doesn't touch your heart, then I mean, it has nothing to do with faith, it has nothing to do with religion. It's just sincerity, not wanting the next person to go hungry.
Through its programs, Zanzab also provides food to poor families throughout the year. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
As we mentioned earlier on, we are watching closely the IFP's 50th anniversary celebrations in Ulundi. We are watching that story closely, and once he takes to the podium, we will most certainly take you there. Now, to this Gauteng Premier, Banyazali Sufi is today visiting the families of 4 community patrollers who were shot and killed at the Merimi informal settlement in the early hours of yesterday morning. According to initial accounts, 4 community-based patrol members were shot and killed, and 8 others were injured in a confrontation between the patrollers and 5 individuals. Our reporter Mbalenhle Mthethwa is live from Soshanguve. Mbalenhle, what are you seeing and hearing on the ground?
Well, what you're seeing is the Premier going to the community members who have gathered outside the first household that he is now visiting. He is speaking to one of the community members right now, and I'm just going to put my mic in so you can hear the conversation.
Sorry? 2012. 2012. Utata obuhulu re ari khulula pele ka re ba re tsenella re tshwara pho ya re se polisa ba mpotsa hore ka mokibelo le ka disanta. Sorry? Sorry? Ke ma polisa mpotsa ba le tshwara pho thata ka mokibelo le la botlhang. Ya hona thata o ba ya especially Friday ari khonurwa. Okay.
Now, with the conversation here between the Premier and one of the community members, just to give you a quick translation, is that the Premier has asked this community member what their problems are and what the issues are. And he has, in fact, said that the issue is the fact that they are grappling with so many issues, including crime. And they're saying that they can't move between Friday on weekends, starting from Friday, because the crime levels just escalate to the point where they are even afraid to leave their households because they are then mugged by these individuals. And the words he used is that baretwara poho, which means we get mugged over weekends and on weekends. We are going to continue following the Premier. Please bear with us. The visuals are a bit shaky at the moment. We try to force our way in order to get as much as possible for our viewers and for the benefit of our viewers. Speaking to more people, the Premier did also speak to us about the fact that on his arrival, he was met by a crying family member. But the person who's speak to us right now about the Premier is the chairperson for community safety, Dr. Bandile Masuku. I'm going to ask my camera colleague to turn the camera around to face Dr. Bandile Masuku, who is standing right next to me, looking very shocked that I've actually put him on the spot like this. But he is here, and we're going to ask him to take one step back, please, so that the viewers at home can see you. Dr. Masuku, you are the person responsible for community safety in Gauteng, and right now we've had this incident that has taken place. Can we please ask you to take a step back? I'm sorry, we just want to frame you and get you in the shot. Talk to us about what needs to happen, and what do you think is going to be the measures to augment safety concerns that have been raised right now by community members?
Yeah, I think basically we'll wait the direction from the Premier, but we generally need a broader strategy and framework to deal with all the problems and crimes situations in informal settlements, because policing is very different in this type of areas, and it makes it difficult if we don't have an overall framework and a strategy, and it's something that we need to look at as the side from the portfolio committee.
And do you think Gauteng traffic wardens could be of assistance in regards to, augmenting the work of the police, particularly because of the spatial design of informal settlements, small passages? You need more people who are able to run on the ground.
That was the initial intention of the police wardens, in terms of increasing police visibility and making sure that law enforcement agencies is actually visible amongst some of these areas. The informal settlements generally, they've got difficulty in terms of their roads, the nature of the roads and access, which is a big question. But with people based in the ward, it makes it easier for policing to happen.
Now, with regards to also just community safety, right? These were people who had taken the task of protecting their community because they were obviously fed up by the crime levels in the area, but they were unarmed, and unfortunately they were met with people who were armed. What happens when even your own crime prevention, your traffic wardens meet people who are armed and yet they are unarmed?
Yeah, remember that we are dealing with community policing, and community policing cannot be the same with the policing that is done by police. So our patrol, one thing that we need to encourage is that they need to work through formal structures like CPFs. They need to be registered so that you can be able to deal with it.
And do you reckon that if these individuals were registered, would we have seen a different outcome?
Yeah, we could have, because they would have maybe better resourced and
The Premier is starting to address the community members who have gathered outside here. As you see us moving, we are moving closer so that you can see the Premier. The camera colleague is framing right now, and you should be able to see the Premier. We are being allowed to walk closer, and here we are, and that is the Premier speaking to community members.
Ke tlo berekisana le maphodisa re tholore go etsaetseng and ke bo mang ba entseng ntho ba entseng ba ba leng spetlele ke tlo ya go spetlela ke tloa mo.
So what we're hearing here is the Premier saying that he is going to ensure that justice is served. He is speaking in Sepedi, and he's saying that after visiting the family members, he is going to go to hospital to visit those who are receiving medical attention. I'm going to hand the mic back over to him.
Ke kopane le maphodisa this morning. Ke bile le meeting le provincial commissioner wa maphodisa. A romella di detectives tsa le batho ba investigator molato o. Or bang explain le or wetsaetseng bothata bo kae. Ke kopa tshwarelo hore le ba bang le ka se kgone ho nkutlwa hobane ntwe re berekisang a se ntwe hantle. Ke kopella tshwarelo mara ke kopa mang le mang ha ka thola re ka kgona ho utlwana. Ntwe berekiswa mona a se ntwe ka re thusang ke ka o ke kopang hore if batho ba ka thola ke kgone ho explain hore re na le information efe o etsahalang. Amandla baba sa nkutlwang ke sa boeletsa ke re ntho ya mathomo ke batlang o bua ka yona o phela nkutlwa jwanong. Ntho ya mathomo ke batlang o buisana le lona ka yona go ikopella ditshwarelo ho ba leloko ba ba tlhaeletseng ke kotsi e. Ke kopane le maphodisa this morning or ba ntlhathollele o etsaetseng mo Merimi. Ba mphile list ya mathata ba kopaneng le ona ba ntlhalosetsa gore ba nyakana le bo mang ba tsebang gore ke bona ba entseng ntho e etsaetseng mona. Kaofela lona le a tseba Provincial Commissioner wa maphodisa o ntshitse notice afa maphodisa 72 hours or ba kgone ho tshwara batho ba entseng ntho e ba entseng mona. Maphodisa mphile long list ya mathata a ba shebaneng le ona ha ba etsa policing mo. Bang explain it or batho ba marry me.
All right, that is Gauteng Premier Banyazali Sufi there in Soshanguve, obviously speaking in both Sepedi and Sesotho, apologizing to the family of those 4 gunned down patrollers in Soshanguve, saying that he's working with police to make sure that they try to go to the bottom of what really transpired in the early hours of Saturday, and they will actually bring back those answers to the community. Now, to this World Tuberculosis Day, which will be observed tomorrow, is an opportunity to increase public awareness on one of the most deadly infectious illnesses in the world. Even though tuberculosis is preventable and curable, it nonetheless kills millions of people annually. With over 10 million cases reported each year, TB is still a major worldwide health concern. According to the World Health Organization, with thousands of cases recorded annually, tuberculosis is the biggest cause of death in South Africa alone. Although TB is still a problem, improvements in prevention, diagnosis and treatment are saving lives. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health, has joined us for discussion. Dr. Motsoaledi, good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Just talk to us. What is the reason behind the continued prevalence of tuberculosis, particularly in South Africa?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers and the listeners. Yes, as you said, TB is a global problem, worldwide problem, which is puzzling. Puzzling because it is definitely curable. Also puzzling because it has been there for centuries, not for decades. And many diseases that came after it have got vaccines, which have vanquished it. Like you saw what happened with COVID. It was killing people left and right very fast, but we soon found a vaccine. TB, over centuries, a vaccine has not yet been found. In 2013, I was the chairperson of the Global Board of Stop TB Partnership, which was established by United Nations and World Health Organization. I still remember in our meeting in Seattle, where I was elected, where they called marketing and brand experts to tell us, why is it not possible to sell TB to the world like all other diseases that are pandemics, where people come together and agree to fight the pandemic. But with TB, it lies low. And the answer I was giving the other time was that it is not a drama queen. It comes in very silently, very, very slowly, but it kills effectively. And I was giving, for example, the example in the mines, in the gold mines in South Africa, where a lot of TB comes from. I was saying, when you meet mining unions, they are able to mobilize strongly for mining accidents like rock falls, to make sure that management prevent them from happening. And I think they've been successful. But TB has killed 100 times more mine workers than rock falls, but to mobilize management to make sure that the mines are safe, people are protected from silica dust, which causes silicosis, which goes to continues over to TB. It's not really easily done. Why? Because the mine workers who die from TB, they die silently in isolation at home many months after they've left the mines, many months or even years. Whereas rock falls happen suddenly, everybody can see them and everybody is protected to action. So that is the problem we're faced with TB. It's a silent killer, very effective. It kills people without them be aware of it, but it finishes them off.
And Minister, what are the most significant barriers to reducing TB transmission in South Africa, particularly in high-risk communities? You've just mentioned mining areas.
Well, the transmission, we've been able to be successful since 2017. Since the World Health Organization launched the strategy on ending TB, we've been following it. And since that time, we've reduced the incidence of TB by 56%. And actually, it's now 57%, according to the latest figures, which is quite an achievement. The problem we're having is to stop death from TB. One of the reasons being that people take medication and stop in the middle, having to go sometimes for a period of 6 to 18 months, even though we've now reduced it. It's something that people get tired of doing. But also, while TB can affect everybody, it is more prevalent in the lower socioeconomic groups where the resources are very limited. And stopping treatment for them happens quite easily. And that's where our problem is.
And how does TB interact with other medical conditions like HIV and AIDS or undernourishment?
Well, both of them, it does interact with them. If your TB makes you undernourished, but if it found you undernourished, it's very severe. TB kills 80% of the people who have got HIV and AIDS, who are suffering from AIDS. 80% of all the AIDS patients, when they die, we know that 80% of the time is TB. So they actually fit into each other. And we have discovered when we launched the world's biggest HIV counseling and testing and put people on ARV, death from TB reduced quite dramatically. So they are definitely related and they fit into each other.
And have you observed any most common misunderstandings regarding tuberculosis, and how do they impede attempts to eradicate TB?
Well, because it's in low socioeconomic groups. And why is it in low socioeconomic groups? Where people are overcrowded, where there's no ventilation, where nutritional status is generally low, and people come to look for help very late. That is the biggest problem in South Africa and in many other low socioeconomic groups around the world. The reason that tomorrow the Deputy President is launching the End TB campaign, in which we are deciding to go and screen 5 million people, is because we want to catch them early. If you catch people early on, you stand a good chance of curing them. So most of the people, the reason that the death rate is still so high, they come very late when they are already finished, when the TB has already eaten them up. And that's the part that's unfortunate. The second unfortunate part is because TB can affect any part of the body, but it's generally regarded as a lung disease. It is mostly pulmonary, but it affects any type of the body. And to pick it in any type of the body, it can go to your brain and cause meningitis and abscesses, where definitely you are not going to survive. It can go to your heart, it can go to your liver, your kidneys, your reproductive organs, where it causes infertility. It goes anywhere. And to get it where it is, except in the lungs, is not a very easy job.
And Minister, given that the numbers appear to be skyrocketing in South Africa, what are the main obstacles to TB prevention and treatment in underprivileged groups?
As I am saying, it's not only the treatment that is needed, it's also the socio-economic conditions. You have got to have good housing, you You've got to end overcrowding. You've got to have good ventilation, and it's not usually there in low socioeconomic groups. Let's remember that our own icon, the founding father of democracy, Nelson Mandela himself, had TB because he was in jail at Pollsmoor, where there was overcrowding and less ventilation. Even now, we know that people still get a lot of TB when they are under such conditions. So that's one of the biggest barriers.
And as government or health department, rather, what actions have you taken just to guarantee improved financing and resources for TB programs?
Well, one of the strategies of ending TB by the World Organization globally is that issue which you have just mentioned. They call it to stop catastrophic healthcare expenditure, whereby families of people who have got TB are forced to spend more. It needs very strong social support system to bring that to an end. But finally, we generally, even when I was the chairperson of this board, one of the things we're chasing scientists about is to find a vaccine. Once we find a vaccine for TB, we'll have solved a problem that happened over centuries. Because the other things will take a long time, like improving socioeconomic status of people is something that never happens overnight anywhere in the world. So if we can find a vaccine, that's why out of all the candidate vaccines now, one called M72 is the most promising and is being tested in 7 countries. And the biggest testing area of that is South Africa, because we provided ourselves to be the biggest, because we are the ones who are suffering the most. The other countries that are high burden countries where that vaccine is being tested is Zambia, is Malawi, is Indonesia, and the Philippines, and and as I said, here in South Africa. And there's a belief that by 2027 rather, 2027, that we might get the preliminary report, because it's the most promising, because it's the only vaccine that is doing a third phase testing. Third phase testing, they've already been satisfied in the laboratories, they've been satisfied with animals, they are now on human beings, and we are very hopeful. And once that is found, it's the easiest way of fighting this scourge for TB. But for now, while that is happening, we need to find people early. That's why we are targeting 5 million people per annum for testing in order to give them treatment earlier, so that we stand a better chance.
Yeah, important story there indeed. Minister, thanks so much for your time. That was Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, talking to us about World TB Day, which is set to be observed tomorrow. You are watching SABC News, and the week ahead will continue after this short break. Welcome back. The Office of the Public Protector, a crucial institution in South Africa's democratic framework, has been operating without a deputy for over a year. This post, which comes with a hefty price tag of 2 million rand per annum, has been vacant since the then Deputy Advocate Kalega's appointment as the Public Protector in November 2023. Now, the search for a suitable candidate to fill this position was abandoned last year due to concerns of bias. This raises important questions about the integrity of the appointment process and the impact of this vacancy on the Office of the Public Protector's ability to effectively fulfill its mandate. Now, to delve deeper into this issue, we are joined by legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala. Mpumelelo has extensive expertise in legal matters and has provided insightful commentary on various issues affecting South African society. Mr. Zikalala, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Can you just help us understand the significance of the Deputy Public Protector position and why it's essential to fill it as soon as possible?
Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to your viewers. It's a very important position. Remember that you have the Constitution that talks about Chapter 9 institutions. You also have the Public Protectors Act that says there must be a deputy public protector who's going to look at the complaints which are filed by members of the public, which is us. Now, you are going to have a situation where a very important position is the second in command of a public institution, of a Chapter 9 institution not being there for over a year. Then the question would be, are the services which are meant to be delivered by the Public Protector's Office being delivered in its optimal manner? Are there any delays which are taking place? And what's the impact of it? And the long and short answer of it would be the people who are going to suffer the most, it's members of the public themselves who are not going to have the type of reprieve that they're looking for within the shortest amount of time. So it's very important that this office is able to work at an optimal level. This office is able to render services, and we don't have to go far. Let's look at the current public protector. She started as deputy public protector, and when there were issues with the public protector, she was then able to step in. Now the question is, if we were to have the same encounter the same problems now, who's going to be the public protector, the acting public protector, while they're still trying to look for another public protector who's going to go into that place and be able to render the services as dictated to by the Constitution and the Public Protectors Act?
Yeah, and I want us to expand on that. I mean, just talk about the implications of this vacancy on the Office of the Public Protector's ability to effectively fulfill its mandate.
Obviously, service delivery is going to be impacted, whether we like it or not. The lesser number of people that are there in that office being able to deliver the services which are required is going to lead to extensive delays. And once those delays have been there, the most important one for me would be, is the trust in the Public Protector's Office still going to be there from the members of the public? If I lay a complaint today and it's only attended to 6 months from now, I am not going to have trust that they're going to deliver the type of justice which I'm looking for. Are they going to deliver their report when the horse is bolted, where I no longer need those services, or I've looked for alternatives? So it's important that this particular process and mechanism it is able to be done as quickly as possible, so that you do not hamper the work of the public protector. Remember, this is not just an ordinary office. It's a Chapter 9 institution. The Constitution requires one to be there. And it is purely there to make sure that whenever a member of the public is disgruntled, they don't have to go to court and pay legal fees, but they can be able to send straight their complaints to someone who will be able to listen to them about a government institution which is not delivering its job. So if there's any, in that particular component, any piece which is missing, that means the person who suffers the most is us as the South African public.
And I want us to talk about the appointment process and bias concerns. I'm sure you've seen that the initial process of finding a suitable candidate was abandoned due to concerns of bias. Can you explain what might have led to these concerns and how they can be addressed?
Remember that the recruitment process is done outside the Office of the Public Protector, though that's Parliament, the executive, and also the president that deals with it. That's what the public protectors actually say. So if there are going to be any elements in which there is a bit of biasness which is going to be there, then it's a level of transparency which is required, and that we require as members of the public, which must be able to expose it. But it doesn't mean that the process must stop and it mustn't move forward. It doesn't mean that the process cannot be restarted again with that person that allegation of biasness is leveled against, not either recusing themselves or maybe justifying why they should be there. So it shouldn't be a process where everything is going to stop just because there's this allegation. The Act is very clear as to how that recruitment is supposed to take place, and all you need to do is to follow it to the T.
And with that said, Mr. Zigalala, how can the appointment process be improved then to ensure transparency, accountability, and the selection of suitable candidate?
Well, they've started it in that manner when they were recruiting the current public protector, and the best way in which things have been going okay is to adopt a similar style as in which we would appoint our presiding officers, our judges. So what we then would do, the Speaker of Parliament and that particular committee responsible for the appointment of the deputy public protector, is to send out invitations to members of the public and say to them, nominate whichever individual would like to nominate. If that nomination is accepted, then go on the shortlisting process. Once the shortlisting process has taken place, then you hold interviews publicly and also deliberations publicly. So even the shortlisting process, to make sure that there's transparency, don't do things behind closed doors. So say I've received 50 names and we're going to deliberate in front of the cameras, so we know exactly what we're looking for in our candidates. We're going to have interviews in front of cameras so that nothing is hidden. Even when we deliberate as members or the committee, there's nothing which is going to be hidden, so that when we take that particular name to Parliament and say, please endorse this name so that you can take to the president for final endorsement, everything should be clear as to how that process has taken place. So if there are allegations of any biasness, they are going to be dispelled within that particular process because it has been transparent from day one.
Surely there will be some impact on accountability and governance, isn't it? Now, how does the absence of a deputy public protector impact the office's ability to really hold those in power accountable?
Either there's going to be no accountability at all, which I don't think is the case since the office is still functioning, or the progress or the manner or the speed in which accountability is being held is going to be hampered due to the low number of people that are going to be there, due to the low number of people that can be able to do the actual job of doing investigations, compiling those reports, holding those that need to be accountable. But another one in which we seem to be missing is the one of a person that can be able to offer strategic advice and innovative ways in the manner in which the office is delivering its duties. For example, in the olden times, you would have written a letter or sent it by post, but now you write an email. Then the question would be, shouldn't you have like your team's meeting or virtual meeting that you can be able to hold? What's the education or the spreading of the words as to what the public protector's office actually does is something which is missing, in which a deputy public protector could be given those powers to say, you are going to head our complaints division, for example. You are also going to head our awareness campaigns so that people know out there how to reach us, when to reach us, what do they reach us for, and also monitor the turnaround time in terms of saying, if a person has laid a complaint today, how long should it take up until they get a positive response? Because you are going to be judged in a manner in which you are able to solve the problems that are being sent by members of the public. So if a member of the public spends more than a month waiting for a simple response or acknowledgement, it seems that the office is not working optimally, which is something that they would need to look at. So a person who's going to be a deputy public protector, even though their duties are shared or delegated to by the public protector, it's going to make sure that the office is able to work optimally, which is what we are all looking for.
Mr. Zikalala, thanks so much for your insights. We appreciate it indeed. That is a legal analyst, Mpumelelo Zikalala. Well, the week ahead continues after this very short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Bafana Bafana, who are now top of Group C, take on Benin in an away fixture in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers on Tuesday. Let's further unpack this with SABC News senior sports reporter Sifiso Ramara. Sifiso, a very good afternoon to you. What must Bafana Bafana do to make sure they continue being in the driving seat?
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Mahaketa, and good afternoon to the viewers. Without any doubt, we all know that Bafana will be playing away, although this game against Benin, it's Benin's match, but we all know that the match will be played at the neutral venue in Ivory Coast, since Benin, they don't have any facility to host a match of that magnitude. So I think for starters, that situation suits Bafana, you know, because basically the two countries will be playing at a neutral venue, and Bafana, they've played at that venue in Ivory Coast before. What Bafana must avoid at all costs is to lose this match. You know, the worst case scenario for Bafana is getting at least a draw away from home, but a win against Benin away will be a bonus for Bafana, because if we look at the standings of Group C, you know, when the draw was concluded from the word go, most people said it's going to be between Bafana and Nigeria. But we also, Nigeria did not have a very good start in this whole thing. Benin and Rwanda, in fact, were punching, you know, above their weight. I mean, if you check, Benin are second in that group, and Rwanda are currently lying third, with Nigeria being fourth, only with 6 points. So what Bafana must do, they must just make sure that they increase their lead between them and any of the teams in that group, more especially Nigeria, because it's not only Bafana that are playing tomorrow, but we all know that Nigeria will also be at home against bottom of the group, Zimbabwe. You can imagine if, say, Bafana, if they drop points, if they don't collect points, say, if they lose that match, they will remain on 10 points, and if Nigeria, if they manage to beat Zimbabwe at home, they will be on 9 points. And you don't want that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
The more the larger the gap between Bafana and Nigeria, the better for South African football up to the stage.
And they are going to Benin with their morale high after that win, 2-0 win over Lesotho on Friday, I'm sure, Sifiso. But with the African Teams World Cup slots having increased from 5 to 10, is it easier to qualify for the global football spectacle?
Easier said than done, Mahaketa. But to be honest with you, I think with the slots having increased, I mean, they've basically doubled from 5 to 10. You know, in the past, the scenario was that, you know, you have 10 group winners. Then the top 10 group winners used to play against each other. It was very, very difficult in the past. But for now, you know, the permutations are very simple. Bafana must just finish top of their group and they'll be on their way to the World Cup. In the past, it was so tricky. You can imagine finishing top of your group was not enough. You were still, I mean, the group winners were playing against each other on a home and away basis. But I think, you know, with slots having increased now, having doubled, I think it's easier, you know, for countries from this confederation of CAF to qualify for the World Cup. Remember, this is the largest confederation member of FIFA. I mean, we've got 54 member countries. In the past, we only had 5 slots, and people were complaining it's not enough. Africa, we deserve more. Then, with the World Cup having increased from 32 to 48 teams, Africa's call was heeded. Now we've got, you know, our slots having doubled. So I think, to be honest, it's easier somehow for African teams to qualify for the World Cup than in the past.
And Benin, Sfiso, are they a threat? And do you see the coach making any changes to the team that played on Friday?
Yeah, like I said, this is an away match. You know, playing away is not like playing at home. In the previous match against Lesotho, Bafana had a very attacking lineup from the word-go. I think they had 4 attacking players. But now they're playing at home. I think the approach is going to be very cautious. You know, the likes of Batuse Obas and Talente Mbata did not start against Lesotho. I'm expecting at least one of them, if not even both of those defensive-minded players to be in the starting lineup. Like I said, you know what, a draw will be enough for Bafana, but a win will definitely be a bonus.
And Sifiso, I could be speaking under correction here. If they qualify, this would be South Africa's first World Cup since 2010. How transformative could this be for football in the country?
You know, most of us, we've seen the rise of Bafana and the fall, and now lately the rise again under the Belgian coach Hugo Broos. Hugo Broos, the objective was very simple when he was appointed as Bafana, you know, to try and change the team and build a new team from scratch. He managed to do that. We saw Bafana qualifying for the last AFCON, and they did not only go there to add numbers, but we saw Bafana coming back with a bronze medal. I mean, I think that makes a statement, you know, to say that South Africa, they are now a force to be reckoned with on African football. So the mission for Hugo Broos was twofold: to make sure that we qualify for the AFCON, but not only that, to also qualify for the World Cup. I mean, like you said, the last World Cup South Africa played in was back in 2010. But remember, we played in that World Cup by virtue of being the hosts. We last qualified for the World Cup proper back in 2002 in Korea and Japan. And that did not give a true reflection about South Africa. I mean, how do we call ourselves a footballing nation, yet we failed to qualify for the World Cup? So it's high time Bafana, they must prove themselves to the whole world and the African continent, that they are a force to be reckoned with. They must qualify for the World Cup, and not only qualify for the World Cup, but make sure also that maybe they proceed to the second round of the World Cup for the very first time, although we know it's not easy at all.
Sifiso, thanks so much for that analysis. That is SABC News senior sports reporter, Sifiso Ramara. Now, South Africans Marco Gilbert and Tristan Nochi have won the penultimate stage of the ABSA Cape Epic Cycle Race over 87 kilometers in and around the Lawrenceford Wine Estate in Somerset West. The pair finished stage 6 in a time of 3 hours, 49 minutes and 37 seconds for their first stage win this year. They were 14 seconds ahead of Italy's Luca Bredot and Simone Avendotto. Overall leaders, Switzerland's Nino Suter and Felipe Colombo were third. Colombia's Monica Calderon Martinez and Tessa Cortecas of the Netherlands comfortably won the women's race. And that was the week ahead. SA Today continues with news at the top of the hour from myself, Margaret Lamutlabe, and the rest of the week ahead. Thanks for choosing us. You take care.